What about his bankruptcies? Do you think they affect his campaign or how people view him?
Um, well, actually, in a large part, it'll actually people will perceive the bankruptcy as like a setback towards his political campaign. Although the timing of his bankruptcies were actually during the Great Recession, which affected much of the major corporations in 2008 after the falling house crisis. So I wouldn't really say that it affected much of the voter perception. As yeah.
Okay. Uh, so, do you think his bankruptcies or his overall wealth say more about him, you personally?
Personally, I wouldn't um, see his success as much more as like an American businessman. I mean, he did his parent, his dad was a wealthy man, and he also gave $1 million as a small loan, as everyone knows, to him, which built his success. But if we were all given the same opportunity, I feel like we would have the same opportunities as Donald Trump did.
Right. Do you think his personal success financially, or maybe his personal failures through his bankruptcies, do you think they would transfer over to our national wealth if he were to become president?
Well, his companies do have a great weight. Uh, Much of the money is actually more than most nations, most nations' GDP. But if we're correlating it towards the national wealth, like the economy, I wouldn't say he would be successful in that way because there's so many things that have to be taken place because he also has to work with legislation which probably wouldn't do work great with Donald Trump, especially since he's a polarizing figure, and the legislation is much of what why we actually how we actually spend and how we get our money. So I don't see a correlation between his wealth and the national wealth.
Okay. What do you know about his like shenanigans in his campaigns, like the name calling, um, and stuff like that?
Well, ever since he actually declared his running for presidency, he's been name calling the Mexicans and the Muslims, and he always states that he's going to build a big grand wall to that he's going to make the Mexicans pay for,
Uh-huh.
and he's also against anti-trade with China, which I don't see any time happening for the United States because we depend most of our economy on China.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't. At the first time that I heard this, I thought he was getting. I was one of those in denials that were saying that Trump will not be as successful as we think he is today.
Uh-huh.
Honestly,
Um, so has the name calling and stuff like that affected people's view of him?
it affected most people's view of him, but there are still those small majority of people that are actually secretly in favor of his racist tactics, especially those who are conservative white old men who are traditionalists and they were born before the 1960s. Racism and social change does not happen over time. We can change the country's economical and political um, status, but we can't really change how cultures viewpoints. For example, in India, they still have problems with the caste system as we see today, and they're still trying to get rid of the racism that's still happening there.
Okay. Is Donald Trump a conservative?
Of course not. If Donald Trump was a conservative, he'd probably get the backing of the Republican Party and the fundamental and the establishment. But we all know that Donald Trump isn't a conservative. He's just an independent minded person that is trying to get the conservative ticket, much like how Bernie Sanders is trying to get the Democratic ticket.
Okay. Uh, do you know anything about like his changes and his views
Yeah.
from the past to now, like how he supported
Yes.
certain things and changing?
Yes, in the 1990s, he was actually in favor of the Democratic Party, and he actually attempted to run for political offices in under the Democratic Party. He also has liberal views as of right now. He states that he's pro-life, but he still wants to fund Planned Parenthood, which is against the conservative viewpoint. So he has a changing viewpoint, I would say, but there's never consistency in his views.
Okay. Why are so many people voting for Trump?
Well, most people that are voting for Trump, they're either attracted towards his wealth, they love money, or they're these people that are done with politicians and they see Donald Trump as a non-politician who's trying to work for the people who don't have a voice in politics. And since he's a businessman and not a politician, they think that he'll favor the general people instead of looking towards himself.
How would his foreign policy stances affect us if he were to become president?
The United States would probably crumble. We are all like interconnected as globalization occurs. We trade with China. That's how we get most of our cheaply made goods. And then we also are trading partners with Canada and Mexico. So even though we build a grand old wall, I don't see how Donald Trump would bring wealth and all of these things that he's talking about. As a matter, I would think that his foreign policy would not be successful at all, and I feel like it will just crumble the United States to the ground.
Okay. Do you think Trump will be elected?
No.
Why?
I feel like there's too many against him. Yeah. Not only does he have to win the primaries, but he also has to receive the Republican nomination if he wants to actually be in the ballot for the November election.
Uh-huh.
And in order to get the nomination in the Republican Party, he would have to get at least majority of the delegates that are in the Republican Party. And if we see the current polls right now, we would see only 30%, which is less than a majority. And then we also see a large field of Republicans. And I feel that once the Republican field dwindles down into two people, his ratings would go down and his favorability rating would go down as well.
Okay. So probably I already know the answer to this question, but would you consider voting for Trump in any circumstances?
No.
No.
Nope.
Not at all.
I would abstain from voting if he was the only person to be in the ballot.
Okay. Cool. Well, that concludes it. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you. I love Donald Trump. Just kidding.